that there are dogmatic approaches on both sides.
Indeed,
And
so.
yeah. So there's a scientist that I like that I'm sure you're familiar with named James Shapiro.
Indeed.
And he has a website called The Third Way in Evolution, which sort of rejects the creationism, let's call it, the poof, life came out of nowhere, but also interestingly seems to reject neo-Darwinism, or at least the
Precise.
mechanism, and therefore is looking for this third option. Whenever
Indeed,
I've
so.
asked people about Professor Shapiro's work, I often get a sort of scoffing from the people who I speak with. And I wonder at it because I say, like, he just published a 700-page peer-reviewed book on this topic. So my question is two-part. One is why the reflexive resistance to people like him? And two, how up-to-date would you say the general public's understanding of evolution actually is
A
nowadays?
long way from being up to date. Let's unpick this one carefully. First of all, James Shapiro learned a lot of what he then applied in his own research to show, as he did, the ability of bacteria in particular to control their genomes. Under stress, they will hypermutate. And the reason he got onto that is that he worked with the great early botanical geneticist, Barbara McClintock.
Mm-hmm.
Barbara McClintock showed, even in the 1930s and 1940s, when she first started publishing it, that under stress, a plant like corn will change the arrangement of its genes. Well, she did it by observing the chromosomes and noticing that sections of one chromosome would actually move to be integrated into another one. These are the mobile genetic elements, which form the basis of Jim Shapiro's work. Now, that work was completely ignored. It was published in the journal Genetics I think this is in the 1950s. Nobody took any notice of this. Very crystal clear, though. You can look at the paper, and it's absolutely clear that the bits of chromosomes are moving around. 30 years later, 1983, she was awarded the Nobel Prize precisely for the discovery of mobile genetic elements. There is no reason to scoff at Barbara McClintock. There is no reason to think that her results were incorrect or crazy, except that they challenge a fundamental assumption of neo-Darwinism, which is that the process by which genes change is entirely random.
Right.
Once you agree that an organism can orchestrate moving its genes around, even if that process is stochastic, it still does it, and then it can be selected from by the organisms themselves. That's how bacteria can easily develop all kinds of reactions to stress upon them, and so do plants. So I think first thing to say is that there's nothing to scoff at in James Shapiro's work, nor in Barbara McClintock's work. In her case, even winning the Nobel Prize did not change people's minds.
Wow.
Now, why did that? I think that the neo-Darwinist synthesis is a very cleverly produced synthesis of many ideas, some of them dogmatic. There is no transmission of body characteristics to the germline. Well, that one has been broken. We now know there are particles that carry information about germline development soma development, the body development in interaction with the environment, that can be carried to the nucleus of the germ cells. And there's no doubt now that such inheritance occurs. The only question, I think, now is how much of that happens, how much of development in evolutionary terms that corresponds to. But those are empirical questions. They'll get answered, and they're open questions, not closed in the way the neo-Darwinist synthesis liked to think.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the problem lies with the dogmatism of the other side. If you ask any people involved in the third way, and particularly somebody like Jim Shapiro, do we know already what needs to be known? The answer would be, I think, yes, we already know that the simplistic view, gene-centric view of neo-Darwinism must be incorrect. But we're open to what further experimentation will show about what's the relevant and relative significance of epigenetic changes, epigenetic inheritance, and the way in which organisms can respond meaningfully to the environmental challenges. All of those are open questions. Seems to me that if anybody is going to scoff at those who go one side or the other, it's the people who are dogmatic. The Weissman barrier is a dogma. The central dogma of molecular biology is a dogma. There are no room for dogmas in science. That's to misunderstand the nature of science. So I think the scoffing is the other way round.
Right. That's what it seems to me. I just wanted to get your feedback on that.
Well,
but
we're so far in very close agreement.
Okay. Do you think that more people should learn about the